Pi's technical makeup is actually very trivial at the core. You have a nested loop. You send an LLM request, the LLM might respond with a final answer or with tool calls, which means execute bash, read that file, whatever. Then we execute those tools, give the results back. LLM does this for as long as it thinks it needs to, and then eventually spits out a final answer without tool requests. That's the basic gist. There's nothing to it, and it's hilarious the amount of money I'm being offered for something like this compared to other deeds I did before, which were way more technical and way more deep tech. I'm Mario, I'm the creator of Pi, the coding agent. The reason I built Pi is that I like being in control of my tools. With Cloud Code, which was the first coding agent I used, I initially felt that its minimalism was right where I wanted to be. And over time, the team started adding a lot of new features. With the sheer velocity and the token maxing they applied to Cloud Code, there were also a lot of changes behind the scenes that made the agent behave differently for the same deterministic workflow. And I don't like that. I already despise the fact that I need to rely on a third-party provider for tokens. It's just not the way I want to work. I just can't bear the thought of having a million lines of code that do something that can be done in 5,000 lines of code, because I think complexity is the mind killer. So I was like, how hard can it be building my own coding agent? I hail from a little town called Deutsch-Feistritz in the woods forests of Styria, a little part of Austria. And my beginnings with computers were basically me loving computer games. So I went to my uncle, which had an Amiga 500 and later Amiga 1200, where he let me play games. And eventually I told my parents, I want to have a computer. And they told me, sure, if you work. So we did, and I got my first 486. 40 megahertz with a turbo button. This was very amazing. And obviously I didn't earn that money. It was my dad mostly doing tiny little illegal jobs after work. And I'll forever be grateful, because that kind of started this whole insanity and has become a big part of my life. And thankfully, computers back then came with a programming environment in MS-DOS called QBasic. So that's where I started out, and it came with a lot of example programs, 2 games, Nibble and Gorillas. And once you have the internet, you can learn anything. The first open source project I got involved with that was meaningful, I guess, was called FreeBasic. It was actually started by Victor, the Brazilian guy who used to mentor me. After being part of an existing open source project, I thought, hey, it would be nice to start one myself. And around 2010, Android came out. I had a little burnout, so a lot of time. And I started working on a game development framework called LibGDX, because I'm very good at names.
I'm Mario, benevolent dictator of LibGDX. Let's cut right to the chase.
Niantic Labs used it for Ingress, one of the first location-based multiplayer games on mobile. Or even desktop games like Slay the Spire would be based on LibGDX. And lots of tiny indie games, some of which actually turned into sustainable businesses for the people who did them. And the proudest moments of myself was going to conferences around the world and having people randomly come up to me and say, hey, man, this is amazing, thanks for building this because it now sustains me and my family. That was cool. Like, that's how open source should work, I guess, being a multiplier. The one thing that LibGDX was lacking for the longest time was support for iOS, and it being geared at mobile game development, that was kind of a bummer, obviously. And that developed into a business relationship eventually. We managed with a very small team to kind of have feature parity with Xamarin within a year and a half or so, which made us an ideal acquisition target for Xamarin, who eventually acquired us, and they were immediately swallowed by Microsoft, who then turned around and said, we cannot touch Oracle technology because of licensing issues. So they shut us down and asked us to work on Xamarin instead. Such is life.
RoboVM is dead.
After the whole RoboVM and closed sourcing of an open source project that I championed as it's always going to be open source, I kind of soured on open source, at least within commercial environment. And I honestly didn't have the energy anymore to maintain any kind of community, because that takes a lot of you.
My name is Armin Ronacher, and I'm co-founder and partner at Arendelle.
Armin and I met on the internet 15 or 16 years ago. He goes around saying he met me early at some game development conference here in Graz while he was still a student. I was already famous and ignored him or something. I don't remember it, sorry Armin.
But I don't think he sort of spend any time thinking about who or what he was interacting with. But then we mostly interacted through the internet. A combination of Reddit and Twitter, I think. Mario is very much on like trying to figure out like how stuff works and then make that work really well. Like he cares that the stuff works really well, and then he also cares that what he can build with it is like morally good.
Initially, I tried to hide Pi, the coding agent, from the world by calling the website shittycodingagent.ai, which immediately poisoned it for any enterprise deployments. I remember somebody from GitHub telling me, can you please rename it? We cannot internally get something through that has the website shittycodingagent.ai. And I also called it Pi because that's such a name that nobody can Google, so the chances of anybody finding this thing are very low. But then I did make the mistake of blogging about it and how I build it, and that it's actually not that hard to build a thing like that. It's built on the Node.js TypeScript stack, but it's basically 4 packages. An AI package, which is an abstraction across all the providers and models that are out there, with context handoff between providers and normalizing all the less than ideal responses that you can get from a provider. Then there is a TUI package, terminal user interface package. Then there is the agentic core package, which basically implements this nested while loop. And finally, there's the coding agent itself, which just takes those 3 packages and combines them. So the one insight I had early on is that the coding agents can code. Why can't the coding agent modify itself?
I really got an increasing feeling throughout the last year that the future of software, at least in part, will be software extending itself. And with Pi, it is exactly what I want. It's like I say it needs to do this, and it builds its own extension, or it builds its own skill. And so it was a very, very quick proof point of this magical experience that a self-modifying agent does. So I fully switched to Pi around Christmas 25. Instead of actually putting all this time into building out Lefos, I started building more and more stuff on top of Pi. And so there was a clear sign for me, like I have developed an addiction not just to agents, but to Pi in particular.
And then Peter decided to make it the agentic core of OpenClaw. And then, yeah, everybody started using Pi, either directly or through OpenClaw.
Then I wrote a blog post in early January, sort of on the, when OpenClaw was really popular. I was like, hey, just do away with the claw and just use the underlying Pi instead.
Shopify seems to be running 50% of their agentic coding workloads on Pi now, or on OpenRouter, Pi is placing 4th now in front of Cloud Code, beating out a lot of other open source agents. So that's when I started understanding that this is kind of serious, because most of these issues and pull requests didn't come from humans, they came from agents. People in San Francisco are currently token maxing, meaning use as many agents and tokens as possible. That is the direct opposite of what me and Armin are doing, because what we're seeing out of Silicon Valley is basically extreme velocity, unsustainable velocity, and I think a little bit of pushback. So if there's one thing to take away from best practices with agentic coding, don't leave your brain at the door. While you can have the agent write the code for you, it's on you to actually read the code, understand the code, and understand the consequences of the design of that code, because you will ultimately own the responsibility for that code.
One of the reasons we spend so much time on agentic coding tools is because they're addictive. And if it just becomes performative art, what you do with them, and you actually don't really develop anything of value, then that's a bad future. And sort of you can build something and you can share it to another person within like 15 minutes, but you already shared before you even tried it yourself. Like nothing of value was created there. I want the future to happen where people that are really good at their job and have enjoyment in it find their job more enjoyable, because the boring part about it can be in parts be automated with AI.
I realized that, first of all, Pi apparently has commercial value in the market. I'd like to build a team around Pi that actually makes it into a sustainable thing.
It should be possible to build a commercial company and also still value this idea of like open protocols and open source software, and finding ways to reclaim a little bit of the space that was otherwise held by large corporations, where like the main interest is just to grow one closed ecosystem. The way we're evaluating our vision now is like trying to see that we can play an important role in keeping these tools available to everybody. Whatever we can do to sort of keep the foundation open, and we want to do something for this. Pi fits very well in the picture because it's an open source product, but also because it is the most minimal harness that doesn't actually have a ton of opinions about any model in particular. Like, there's no lock-in in Pi. what a large model can get away with in inefficiencies because of just its massive scale, a local model cannot get away with. And all of a sudden, like, the sort of traditional approaches to software engineering still matter. Bugs actually need to be fixed, and behaviors actually need to be investigated. Pi is just a very, very good starting point to do all these kinds of experiments.
Ultimately, what we want is intelligence for everyone, maybe even locally, with platform neutral tools like Pi or open code or whatever you have, allowing you to access that intelligence and make it useful. So yeah, let's hope for that future.
The total number of humans did not increase just because we got agents. Like, at the end of the day, really we're just here to service humans.
I don't have any grandiose legacy visions myself. I just like to build things, see what sticks, and contribute to the way a lot of people use new technology. That's basically my only wish.